What if I told you a single moment on Family Feud could bring a normally lighthearted game to a sudden, tense standstill? Welcome to Harvey's Highlights, the channel where we dive deep into the most shocking, emotional, and unforgettable moments from Family Feud. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story like this. This time, we're looking at a moment that had viewers at home holding their breath. The stage was set for a typical episode filled with laughter and friendly competition. Families were lined up, buzzing with excitement, and Steve Harvey was in his element, cracking jokes, teasing contestants, and keeping the energy high. But one contestant's behavior would push things to a whole new level. It all started when the opposing family gave an answer that, by the rules of the game, was perfectly valid. But instead of simply moving on, one member of the contestant team couldn't resist mocking them. "Ha! That's your answer? Seriously? That's the best you got?" The contestant sneered, rolling his eyes dramatically. The laughter from some of his own team quickly faded as Steve's eyes narrowed, his usual grin replaced by a sharp, focused stare. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," Steve said, holding up his hands to stop the contestant mid-laugh. "We don't do that here. You come on this stage to have fun, but also to show respect. Do you understand me?" The contestant smirked, shrugging. "I was just joking around, Steve. Lighten up." Steve's tone grew firmer. "No, that's not a joke. That's disrespect. You're mocking a family who's here to play, just like you. And let me tell you something. Mocking them ain't funny." The audience went quiet, sensing the shift in energy. You could almost hear a pin drop as Steve's words hung in the air. "You think it's a game? It is a game, but it's also a chance to show character. If you can't handle a little humility, maybe this isn't the place for you." The opposing family, stunned, looked at each other. "We didn't mean to upset anyone," one member said quietly. Steve turned back to the contestant, shaking his head. "It's not about upsetting anyone. It's about respect. You step on this stage representing yourself and your family. And if you can't hold yourself to basic decency, then I have to step in." The contestant finally seemed to realize he had gone too far. I didn't mean to be rude," he muttered, his earlier arrogance fading under Steve's unwavering gaze. "Good," Steve replied, nodding. "That's what I needed to hear. We're here to have fun, we're here to play, but we're also here to treat each other right. Remember that next time you feel like mocking someone. Respect first. Everything else comes after." The tension slowly eased, the families exchanged tentative smiles, and the game continued, but the lesson was crystal clear. Steve Harvey wasn't just hosting a game show that day. He was teaching a real-life lesson about humility, respect, and the power of words. This was a moment fans would remember, not for the answers on the board, but for the respect demanded and the dignity preserved right there on the Family Feud stage. The tension from that first exchange hadn't completely left the stage. The contestant who had mocked the opposing family now sat quietly, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Steve, sensing that more needed to be said to set the tone for the rest of the game, leaned forward and addressed both teams. "Listen, everybody," Steve began, his voice calm but commanding. "Family Feud is about fun. It's about laughter. And yes, it's about winning. But most of all, it's about showing respect. Respect for the other team, respect for yourself, and respect for this game." One of the opposing family members, still shocked by the earlier insult, spoke up. "Steve, I wasn't expecting that kind of behavior. I just wanted to play." "And you will," Steve reassured them. "You'll play, and you'll do it with your heads held high. That's all anyone asks here." Meanwhile, the contestant who had mocked the family finally muttered under his breath, almost to himself, "I didn't think it would get this serious." Steve's eyes locked onto him. "I don't care what you thought. Words matter. How you treat people matters. You get one shot on this stage. Make it count. Don't waste it tearing someone else down." The audience, who had been silent during the exchange, erupted into applause. Some shouted words of encouragement to the opposing family. Steve smiled briefly, letting the moment sink in. "You know what?" Steve continued, pacing slightly in front of the contestant. I've been hosting this show for years, and I've seen it all. I've seen families argue, cry, laugh, and sometimes get completely out of line. But this, he pointed to the contestant, this is a teachable moment. And I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking to everyone watching at home. Words have weight. Respect is earned, and it starts with how you treat people on this stage. The contestant nodded, swallowing hard, clearly feeling the weight of Steve's words. I understand, Steve, he admitted, his tone humbled. Good, Steve said, clapping his hands once. Now let's move forward and play some Family Feud the right way. And remember, if you can't bring respect, don't bring anything at all. The game resumed, but the energy had shifted. The opposing family seemed more confident, playing with focus rather than tension. The once arrogant contestant now answered carefully, double-checking his words before speaking. Even during commercial breaks, whispers of Steve's words echoed backstage. Crew members and producers commented on how the normally jovial host had handled the situation. Firm, yet fair, teaching not just the contestant, but the audience a lesson they wouldn't forget. By the time the episode concluded, viewers at home were buzzing online. Clips of Steve's intervention went viral almost immediately, with fans praising his ability to handle conflict without losing his signature humor. Many commented, Steve didn't just host the game, he taught a life lesson. And that contestant needed that reality check. And for the contestant himself, the experience became a turning point. Later in the episode, Steve even caught him practicing a sincere apology to the opposing family, and the host nodded approvingly. That's better, Steve said. See how much smoother life goes when you treat people right? The stage lights dimmed slightly, but the lesson lingered. Everyone in the studio knew they had witnessed more than just a game. They had witnessed a moment of accountability, guided by one of the most respected hosts in television. As the game continued, the atmosphere on stage had shifted entirely. The opposing family, once tense and rattled, now played with a sense of purpose and determination. Every answer was deliberate, every reaction measured. Meanwhile, the contestant who had mocked them earlier seemed almost transformed. He was quieter, more cautious, and visibly reflecting on Steve's earlier words. Steve noticed the change immediately. Now this, he said, gesturing toward the family that had been mocked. This is how you play Family Feud. Confident, respectful, and ready to have fun. That's the spirit we want on this stage. The contestant swallowed hard, trying to muster a small smile. I guess I didn't realize how serious it could get, he admitted quietly. Steve leaned in closer, lowering his voice slightly so only the contestant could hear. Let me tell you something, Steve said, his tone firm but not harsh. People remember how you make them feel more than anything else. Right now, you've got a chance to change how they remember you. Don't waste it. The contestant nodded, visibly humbled. I understand, he whispered. Back with the audience, reactions were mixed. Some laughed nervously at the awkward tension, while others nodded, clearly impressed with Steve's handling of the situation. A few even shouted words of encouragement. You got this? And play fair. Steve turned back to the game board. All right, let's see who can top the survey. Name something you can't live without. The opposing family quickly conferred, whispering ideas under their breath. The contestant who had mocked them paused, then surprisingly joined in, suggesting an answer that earned laughs and points for both teams. That's what I'm talking about, Steve exclaimed. See what happens when you put respect into the mix? The game flows better, people get along, and everyone has a shot at winning. Even during commercial breaks, the vibe was noticeably different. Crew members commented on the sudden calm, and producers exchanged surprised glances at how smoothly the show had rebounded. Steve, however, simply sat back for a moment, smiling knowingly. It doesn't always go this way, he muttered to a producer. But when it does, it's worth every minute. As the final rounds approached, the previously mocking contestant began showing signs of real teamwork. He answered questions thoughtfully, celebrated correct answers, and even complimented the opposing family when they did well. Good job, y'all, he said sincerely after one of their answers topped the board. Steve grinned broadly, nodding approvingly. You see that? Steve addressed the audience. That right there, what just happened, is exactly why we have Family Feud. It's not just about points or prizes. It's about people learning, connecting, and, yes, sometimes realizing they need to adjust how they treat others. That's life, right? By the end of the episode, the atmosphere was completely transformed. The teams shook hands warmly, and the once tense contestant even shared a brief laugh with the opposing family. Steve clapped his hands together, turning toward the camera. That's Family Feud, folks. Sometimes the biggest lesson isn't on the board. It's right here, he said, tapping his chest. The show concluded with smiles all around, but the episode would not soon be forgotten. Clips of Steve addressing the contestants' behavior spread across social media, with fans praising his ability to combine humor, authority, and life lessons all in one moment. Comments poured in. Steve Harvey didn't just host, he educated. That contestant learned a lesson we all need, and Family Feud at its finest. The contestant himself, who had once mocked the other family, later admitted backstage that he had learned an important lesson about empathy, respect, and the impact of words. Steve, ever the mentor, offered a final piece of advice. Remember, it's a game, but it's also a stage. How you show up matters more than you think. The lesson of that day wasn't about points or prizes. It was about accountability, growth, and the power of reflection. And for the viewers at home, it was a reminder that even in a light-hearted game show, life lessons can arrive when you least expect them. The game had reached its final rounds, and the tension on stage was palpable, but it was no longer just about winning. The earlier conflict had shifted the focus of everyone involved. Even the audience, once buzzing with excitement and laughter, now watched intently, sensing the underlying lesson that had unfolded. Steve Harvey leaned against the podium, arms crossed, observing both teams carefully. All right, y'all, this is it. One last chance to bring it home, he announced, his usual humor softened by the seriousness of the moment. But remember what we talked about. Respect, teamwork, and listening. That's how you really win here. The contestant who had mocked the opposing family took a deep breath and spoke quietly to his teammates. Let's do this together. Everyone counts, every answer matters, he said, his tone markedly different from the brash attitude he had shown earlier. His teammates nodded, encouraged by his newfound humility. On the other side, the opposing family huddled quickly. Stay focused. Don't let them intimidate you. We know our stuff, the eldest sibling said. The camaraderie on both sides was now genuine. Competition still existed, but it was framed by mutual respect. Steve smiled at the exchange. That's what I'm talking about. This is how grown-ups handle it, he said. You argue, you compete, but you do it with class. That's the difference. The final question flashed on the board. Name something you do first thing in the morning. Both teams buzzed in with almost equal speed. Answers came pouring in: coffee, brush teeth, check phone, make breakfast. The previously mocking contestant paused, then added, pray, earning nods from both sides and a murmured approval from Steve. Now that's the right answer, Steve said softly. See, that's respect for yourself and for the people around you. That's what I like to see. The audience erupted into applause, not just for the answer, but for the transformation that had taken place on stage. After the final round, both families approached the center of the stage to shake hands. The contestant who had caused the earlier tension extended a genuine hand to the opposing family leader. I'm sorry for earlier, he said earnestly. I didn't mean to disrespect anyone. The opposing family leader smiled, gripping his hand firmly. Apology accepted. You learned, and that's what matters. Steve clapped his hands together, turning toward the camera. Y'all, that's why I do this show. It's not just laughs and prizes. It's about people learning about themselves and each other. Moments like this, priceless. Backstage, crew members and producers whispered among themselves, impressed with how the tense situation had resolved so positively. Even Steve's own team noted that the contestant had truly internalized the lesson he had been given on stage. As the families exited the stage, Steve leaned in, speaking directly to the contestant. Remember, son, how you treat people, even when you're joking or competing, stays with them. You made a mistake, but you fixed it. That's bigger than any win tonight. The contestant nodded, a reflective smile on his face. I get it now, Mr. Harvey. I really do. Steve's final words to the camera were as much a message to the viewers at home as to the people on stage. Family Feud is more than a game. It's life in miniature. How you behave, how you listen, how you respect, it all counts. And if you take one thing from tonight, let it be this: character matters above all. The applause continued as the credits rolled, but the lesson lingered. Social media exploded with clips of Steve confronting the contestant and guiding him toward understanding, with fans commenting on how much they appreciated the depth and humanity he brought to the show. For the contestant, it was an unforgettable night, a turning point that reminded him that personal growth often comes when you least expect it, even in the middle of a television game show. The studio was buzzing as the families took their final photos, but Steve Harvey remained at center stage, reflecting on what had just unfolded. The energy was lighter now, full of relief and respect rather than tension. He looked directly into the camera, his voice calm but commanding. Y'all saw what happens when people speak without thinking. But you also saw how quickly someone can turn that around when they choose to do the right thing. The contestant who had mocked the opposing family earlier approached Steve one last time. Mr. Harvey, I just want to thank you for calling me out. I didn't realize how much my words could hurt. I'll carry this with me. Steve smiled and patted his shoulder. That's what I like to hear. That's why I do this. Not just for laughs or points, but for moments like this. You learned, and that's the real victory tonight. The opposing family also came forward. We appreciate your apology, the father said. It takes courage to admit when you were wrong, especially on national television. Steve nodded. And courage? That's something we all need a little more of. Courage to own our actions. Courage to respect each other. Courage to make better choices. Back in the audience, viewers were still talking among themselves, many wiping tears from their eyes. The moment had transcended the usual comedy and competition of Family Feud. It was now a story about humility, respect, and the power of accountability. The contestants' teammates gathered around him, clapping him on the back. You really stepped up, one said. That was impressive. You could have doubled down, but you didn't. Steve turned to the camera again, addressing the millions watching from home. Family Feud isn't just about getting the right answer. It's about learning who you are when the spotlight's on you. It's about treating people with decency, even when it's hard. And that lesson? That's worth more than any prize. As the families exited the stage for good, Steve took a deep breath, smiling. Tonight we had a little chaos, a little drama, but in the end, we got growth. That's the kind of Family Feud I love. Crew members were still buzzing backstage, many remarking that it was rare to see such a complete turnaround in one episode. Social media lit up within minutes, with clips of Steve confronting the contestant, the apology, and the heartfelt handshake going viral. Fans praised not just the contestants, but Steve's ability to guide the situation with humor, wisdom, and authority. Steve Harvey's final words before the cameras cut off were simple, yet powerful. Remember this: words have weight, respect matters, and every chance you get to do the right thing, take it. Life's too short not to. The applause from the audience carried through the studio, a fitting tribute to a night that had started with conflict but ended with understanding, humility, and a lesson that viewers would carry far beyond the game show stage. The story of that Family Feud episode would be talked about for weeks, not just for the laughs, but for the reminder that sometimes the biggest wins are measured in growth, not points.